how the immigrants are represented in the media. And what does that lead to?
I cannot believe it is my country that has done this.
Look after the lives of those who believe that the UK is a safe place for them, but are dying on the journey.
So what we're doing is talking to business, as you say, about their issues.
Migration is an old and new phenomenon, defined by legal scholars as an individual who permanently leaves the territory of his state for the territory of another state, while an immigrant is defined as any person who changes his country of habitual residence. These are two recent definitions of migration that are related to a global phenomenon that emerged after the emergence of countries. But the general meaning of migration is not limited to moving from one country to another.
Britain will treat EU migrants just the same as those from the rest of the world.
The Channel today was busy thanks to calm waters and fine weather, possibly a final chance for migrants who've spent the summer waiting for an opportunity to reach the UK.
But we have a crisis
at
the moment and a shortage.
Those are your words, okay?
We certainly have labour shortages. I think you'd have to sign up to those words.
Okay, and what I would say is that is a function.
Now, when it comes to Brexit, one of the big things, of course, everyone's been talking about is what is the economic impact going to be? Well, no one really knows for sure, but it's worth just looking at a few potential forecasts.
New figures from the United Nations show that an average of 2 children have drowned every day since last September.
Well, CBS News has confirmed that a 6th migrant child has died after crossing the US-Mexico border.
Today I am trying to find answers to many questions we have regarding who are these immigrants and why the media part of their stories.
Tragic episodes like the Al Kurdi incident in 2015, especially in Europe, media tends to feed into negative public perceptions on refugees.
I think you predominantly see 2 discourses on refugees. One being that they are bringing a threat with them, either crime or a threat to, let's say, the national identity.
I think the media, with any issue, it is often about sensationalism. And so the idea of taking something and making it bigger, making something seem more dangerous or more of a threat than it is. And that happens with lots of issues.
The busiest U.S. border crossing is open again this morning after a confrontation forced it to close temporarily yesterday.
These refugees are coming over, and you said 350 a day, but they're doing more than just coming over and being polite.
If Islam is so fantastic, why do Muslims always flee to Christian countries? Isn't it because Christian lands are free and tolerant and open? And isn't that the very thing that Muslims try and change when they arrive in our country?
At the same time, there's this other discourse that is kind of victimizing.
We can see that it actually reflects international media's response to refugees, such as perceiving Syrian refugees as victims, sometimes as a threat. both in terms of socioeconomic reasons or as a security threat.
Day by day, I saw the media become political. They are just trying to show what their governments or what their sponsors want to, especially in Europe. They are just trying to show the migrants they are in the camps, they have nothing to do. They are just always waiting for the help from the governments, waiting for their needs.
Some immigrants have a story of fear of the media, stemming from the lack of confidence in the stranger person who wants to talk to them and get to know their situation closely. In addition to this, a belief prevailed among a sector of refugees that the assistance they receive, whether from the UNHCR or from NGOs supporting refugees, will stop if one speaks to the media or raises any complaint. There were also those who were afraid to talk to the media for fear of any negative consequences for their families in their homeland if they spoke about anything that affected the country from which they came. Their work focused on the image depicted around the immigrant, whether he left his motherland to live or to escape from a difficult reality, emphasizing the role that the media plays in shaping and passing this image to public opinion. The opinion polls that dealt with the issue of immigrants showed a division of opinion in the same society on the same issue, noting that the media played a role in promoting the difference by adopting the ideas of the street without trying to direct them towards the truth. The issue of immigrants in Europe and how Western societies have come to view Muslim immigrants as posing a political and terrorist threat to them, especially in recent years, regretting that the Western view of the immigrant was based on his origins and became based on his religion. Despite the large number of analyses and university studies that have focused on addressing the phenomenon of migration in recent times, the report issued by the International Organization for Migration indicates that there is a misrepresentation of the use of these results by politicians, the media, and the public in general, and attributed the reason for this to focusing attention on the political aspect and not on facts and figures. Among the recommendations is also a call to avoid the politicization of the migration file and conduct an objective analysis of the phenomenon in which the interests of society as a whole and not just the interests of a particular group are considered. This question was attempted to be answered by a study prepared by the International Organization for Migration and published in the Belgian capital, Brussels. The study showed that part of the media does not hesitate to spread a negative image of immigrants and their role in the society in which they live, by focusing on some aspects that, for this media, constitute negative points for immigrants, including the high unemployment rates among them and the increasing crime rates that they find themselves they are accused of it, the low rates of education in their ranks, and the emergence of problems related to integration into the societies in which they live. They added that when tragedies occur, such as the one that killed more than 800 migrants at sea, media coverage becomes important to inform public opinion of the reality of the suffering of these migrants in their countries and in the countries they wish to reach. On the contribution of immigrants to the economic growth and intellectual and cultural richness of societies. It published positive pictures and reports accompanied by statistics showing the contributions of migrants and their positive role in society, with the aim of changing the perception of others and facilitating their integration processes, as well as helping the government of the countries that receive them to reap the positive contributions of international migration. Renewed warnings from economic institutions that the Brexit bill would be too costly if British politicians tried to ignore economic realities and scramble to achieve the goal of leaving the European Union, some of which have come to be seen as flabby, ossified, and even outdated. It came just weeks before British Prime Minister Theresa May pledged to invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which allows her to launch formal negotiations with the European Union and take Britain out of it within 2 years or more. The New Economics Foundation published a study that showed that the British economy would lose £328 million if immigrants stopped working for only 24 hours, and the results of the study indicated that many economic sectors would be affected if this happened, especially health and services. The study said that migrant workers represent more than 10% of all active employment in the British economy, and that they contribute a total of 4% of the general national income.
Whether that's, children playing video games, or people getting addicted to social media, or drug use, and I think immigration is another one of those things that they regularly kind of have these sort of hysterical panics about, because that sells newspapers. And also a lot of politicians have used it to their agenda by kind of creating this fear of outsiders. Then what that tends to do is it makes people kind of want to look for leadership and look for support, and so because they feel threatened, they look towards politicians that are going to protect them. So I think that politicians and the media do very often kind of fan the flames of sort of anti-immigration sentiment, and I don't think that enough is really done to show success stories of immigrants. I don't think that when someone has done well who's from an immigration background, we don't hear about that, or at least their success isn't linked with the fact that they were once an immigrant. So if something goes wrong, it's because they're an immigrant, but if something goes good, we don't know if it was because they're an immigrant or not. And I think that's part of why the problem was. I think that whilst it's obviously really sad and tragic when we see a lot of the stories that we do of things that are happening, like people that are arriving in dinghies in really dangerous conditions that are kind of, not good for them, that's obviously, I don't think that anyone wants to see that happening, because it's bad for the people that are involved, and then there are also the people that feel it's bad that they're coming at all. But then it would be nice to hear more of the, as I say, we only hear those negative stories, we don't hear the positive stories. It'd be nice to hear, oh look, here's an example of someone who came here as an immigrant but is now working as a business leader and is employing so many people. Or here is a story of someone who came here as an immigrant and is now a head teacher at a school, or is a really successful politician. And I think that if more of those stories were out there, then people would have a bit more of a balanced idea of what immigration is and what it can do.
The media can paint a positive image that works to positively influence the interaction of others with immigrants, and it is also capable of forming a negative image that cannot be forgotten. The real problem with the media's handling of political issues, including the issues of immigrants, lies in the fact that it is a quick treatment that targets excitement and does not seek a serious address that analyzes the problems in depth.
Boris, you're not listening. Priti Patel, you're not listening. Now is the call out to the patriots of this country. If our border force and our government can't protect this border, then the people must.
Changing the rules on immigration.
A new immigration bill.
Points-based immigration system.
Brightest in the bed.
The greatest place to live.
They met with a bunch of migrants in Calais. They said they could all come to Britain.
And this map shows in red Turkey, but the only countries named in this map are Syria and Iran. That's scaremongering, Boris, and you should be ashamed.
All right, this is Priti Patel, and this is her brand new, kind of Australian-style points-based immigration system set to take effect from 2021.
Now here you are, Mr. Johnson. April the 17th, you said, I'm very pro-Turkish, but what I certainly can't imagine is a situation in which 77 million of my fellow Turks and those of Turkish origin come here without any checks at all. You said this is mad, that won't work. You said it was mad, Mr. Johnson. The public will draw the reasonable conclusion that the only way to avoid having common borders with Turkey, they wrote, is to vote leave and take back control.
Well, the biggest false misconception is that refugees bring an extreme threat to our national security.
Among these migrants are embedded a lot of ISIS, personnel, a lot of potential terrorists.
The fact is, Muslim immigration means more Islamic terrorism. It's just that simple.
Well, of course, the most prominent one that we've been facing is this relation of the migrants and refugees with terrorism.
You can cite hundreds of articles, hundreds of research that say that refugees actually have a much lower incidence of crime.
Of the more than 3 million refugees admitted from 1975 to the end of 2015, 20 were terrorists.
One incident takes place, one person from Syria assaulting a woman, and then immediately the public reacts towards the entire group of Syrians in that region. That is the first and I think most important link, because it is also creating the fear, right? It is adding into that fear of the people, like they are saying, these people are coming, we're not safe anymore.
I'm mother of 3 children, and we are here together to protest against the aggressivity of people who are grabbing our children and who are bringing fear in our country.
The media can paint a positive image that works to positively influence the interaction of others with immigrants, and it is also able to form a negative image that is indelible from the minds and may lead to complications and sensitivities. The problem in this region is that there is a state of nervousness among all parties at this time because of the security challenges posed by the threats coming from religious groups in the East, which are running an open conflict with the countries of the West and expect pure support from Muslim minorities by virtue of partnership in religion. The workforce is in danger, but no one knows the answer to that. Migration can provide significant economic benefits such as a more flexible workforce, a larger skilled base, increased demand as well as greater diversity in innovation, but immigration is also controversial. The fear of immigration is that immigrants take jobs from the native-born population, yet this is known as the labour block fallacy.
I think that the evidence now generally says that immigration does help. Not only does it fill vacancies, in certain jobs, which we're kind of obviously has been a problem when we've kind of come out of the EU and there are all these job vacancies that used to be filled by people from the EU. But generally speaking, they contribute more, and anyone that's working here is therefore paying taxes here and kind of adding and building to the economy. So, as I say, I can't quote the figures to hand, but I'm pretty sure there were figures that said over a period of 10 years that it was several billion pounds, I think, that immigrants added to the economy. But all we ever hear about is immigrants being on benefits or immigrants using the health system and immigrants being a burden. But of course, I think that's because when immigrants arrive, they're often using those services first. And so that's when they're associated with being immigrants. But after they've been here for 5-10 years, they'll be starting to work, they'll be starting to run their own businesses, and so actually in the long term they've had a positive impact, but by then they're not really considered immigrants anymore, and I think that's where part of that disjuncture is.
What we do in this paper is to investigate the fiscal net contribution of immigrants. We focus on immigrants who came after 2000, and we consider the period between 2000 and 2011. Whether they have paid more or less in terms of taxes than what they received in terms of benefits.
All immigrant groups who came to the UK since 2000 have made positive fiscal contributions.
The net fiscal contribution is clearly positive. That means they paid more in terms of taxes than what they received in terms of transfers and benefits.
The power of the media lies in its ability to form a latent awareness in the minds of those with whom we have to deal for one reason or another, or who, by virtue of their positions or conditions, have the ability to influence the course of our lives, especially in the first stage of stability in the diaspora, which is far from stable, which the immigrant is trying to put his roots inside the land he chose to be his new home.
I think we've all seen them. These images of boats stacked with people on the Mediterranean or on the Aegean Sea. Then this awful image, this tragic event of Alan Kurdi, washed up on the shore of the Aegean.
Nothing has captured this crisis like the picture that we began with last night. The 3-year-old Syrian boy who washed up, drowned on a Turkish beach. It's hard to watch, but it should be seen.
Every journalism student in America that takes a journalism class has to take a media ethics course. And in those courses we talk about what kinds of decisions we have to make as journalists, whether it's right to publish violent photographs or whether it's ethical to make decisions like that, display dead bodies or that use this kind of a dead 3-year-old in that sense. And what we have to consider is what impact it will have.
I think you have to publish the photo. You have to publish it widely. You have to let people see it. As soon as I saw that photo, I recognized that it was going to become one of those photos that changes the course of history.
I mean, it's a shame that it took a picture of a dead child in order to draw that up, but at the same time, it got people moving, it got people realizing what kind of drastic situation these countries were in, what these people were in. So in a sense, I mean, it was the right editorial decision in my opinion.
I think it's okay to publish such images if they have a purpose. What I mean is The Independent, for instance, the UK daily. When they published the image, they simultaneously started an online campaign asking their readers to sign a petition urging the British government to accept more refugees, to take more responsibility.
Today I can announce that we will do more to providing resettlement for thousands more Syrian refugees.
I don't think there is a case in British history where government policy has been changed overnight on the basis of one photograph. David Cameron literally changed government policy overnight.
Confronting this campaign of skepticism or any other stereotypes is not possible unless there is an explicit confrontation with oneself and the recognition that the mechanisms of communication with societies and their bodies, including media tools, lack the minimum level of integration and structure and suffer from randomness and intellectual and political confusion before the administration. There is certainly a clear lack of cultural discourse and therefore a harmonious and logical media, and we do not say unified, this is a far-fetched dream. Was keen to highlight the aspects of exploitation of the issue of immigration by politicians and the media as an exaggerated element of intimidation, and to involve immigrants in determining the parameters of the policy applied in this field.
So I guess, in a way, the media becomes an important tool in mobilizing the public in a positive way. One image may not change the whole discussion, but it can actually have an important contribution if the political context also allows it.
Was it effective? For a moment, yes. I do think we moved to a more humanized debates about migration, but only for so long.
I don't think it is helping anybody to show those boats. I mean, imagine the body of Aylan Kurdi. Remember 2015, September? The entire media, I mean, it was almost globally acknowledged, actually came up with this one photo of a little boy on the Aegean shore. And what was the reaction?
There are just so many contradictions. We mourn the tragic death of 2-year-old Aylan Kurdi, and yet, since then, more than 200 children have subsequently drowned in the Mediterranean.
New figures from the United Nations show that an average of 2 children have drowned every day since last September.
It has opened a public debate, but then there were many other drowned kids, and the media did not really show the same attention.
And the result was what? Turkey-EU readmission agreement. Did it help much? No. As I said, it only changed the routes, and it had some kind of a deterrence effect. Did it really make any positive impact on the people? So are they feeling much more for these people on the boat now? Not really. They keep on seeing these as invaders who are coming to get their jobs or who are coming to get their schools. So I don't know, I cannot see any positive outcome of those images.
And I think one thing we should also not forget is, again, the element of race here. I think they were only humanizing to a certain extent. When black and brown bodies are not as valued as a white body, these images really can only do as much. So we very quickly move to a discourse of crisis, something unprecedented, a flood of people coming to Europe. And then we see a turn to more strict border controls.
I think what is affecting the media's discourse on this is more coming from the upper class of politicians. I mean, we saw a big radical change in how the media was portraying refugees when Donald Trump was elected.
They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Prior to that, it was just kind of a very, I don't want to say mundane, but it was a much less polarized and much less violent perception of who these people were and what they tried to do.
In the European context, you can also see that the far-right parties use this as a way of gaining votes, I would say, or mobilizing their voters.
I think it is largely part of the populism that has been on the rise in Europe. For example, with the recent crisis in the Mediterranean with the Italian Ministry of Interior. I mean, he made a big issue when a boat that was trying to reach the shores of Italy actually coming in.
Quindi adesso magari cominceranno le litanie dei professori e degli intellettuali, delle associazioni, di un cardinale, di 6.000 telegiornali. Aprite, spalancate, abbracciate, accogliete. No, no, no.
But then when you actually look at the numbers, the number of boats arriving to Europe has been decreasing. I mean, there was no evidence that Italy has been invaded by immigrants, right? But it really fit well with this political interests of this new rising populism, right wing, in Europe as well.
Noi siamo qua perché siamo contro gli immigrati clandestini, punto.
Because it would distract the public from focusing on other issues.
Dino salta clandestino,
I think the biggest problem is that the migrant voice is actually lacking in the conversation. And this is as true for media as it is for politics and civil society. So really just listening to the migrants and refugees themselves is key to actually providing the right support and the right needs.
And media now we have the chance to expose all the things and the crimes that are happening. So I guess media is such an important weapon that can be really used in such a good way in order to cut and break all the stereotypes and to show people what is really happening.
In this context, I believe that judging the issue of immigration depends on the extent of what is promoted in public opinion about the issue, whether by politicians or by the media. What is promoted about immigration through the media and in the political debate affects the formation of public opinion, which is characterized by the fact that estimates of immigration, especially illegal immigration, are exaggerated. It has found that the estimates circulated in the media exceed in some cases 3 times the real numbers. For example, some in the United States believe that the proportion of immigrants in the country reaches about 39% of the total population, while it does not exceed 14%, while in Italy, many think that the proportion reaches about 25%, while it does not exceed 7%. Although there is no certainty that there is a direct relationship between what the media promotes about immigration and the ideas and perceptions formed in public opinion and the policies pursued by countries in this field. On the other hand, considering that the media may distort the discussion about immigration by focusing on an aspect such as illegal immigration, or by referring to immigration from time to time and intermittently, or by exaggerating the estimates. They also argue that the defect in coverage may also be due to the economic dominance of the media, especially during the last 20 years.